All right, you guys. So today's video has to do with kind of what we were building on last week, and it's equations, right? Having an equal sign, having two things, having something on each side of the equal sign, and then moving things across an equal sign. If we aren't moving them across an equal sign, then it would be like the equation or an expression, and we would just combine like terms and simplify it as far as we can. But with an equation, we are typically looking to solve for a variable. In this case, I'm going to show you guys a fraction one because I put one on your assignment today. So negative 2/5 minus 4/3 y is equal to 1/2. So you'll notice it's just like it would be with as a two-step equation, right? You have you and your best friend, and then you have this stranger. So we want to use those same rules. We have to get rid of the stranger by doing the opposite and getting it to the other side. And then we want to separate you and your best friend, okay? By doing the opposite of what's happening. Now, realize the opposite of what's happening between these two would be multiply. So we would divide. It's not adding because we're not saying y plus or minus 4/3, okay? So let's take this a step at a time. We know that we have our stranger, we have me and my best friend, and then we have equals a number. So we have to get this stranger to the other side. It's the one that's furthest away from our variable. How do we get rid of a negative 2/5? Well, we would add 2/5. We would add 2/5 to that side. We would come over here and add 2/5 to this side. Now, fractions are interesting because if you have a calculator, you can just type them in and it will give you your answer. If you don't, then you have to be a little bit careful. You have to get them into the same size of piece. That's what you're doing when you're getting a common denominator. So we have 1/2. I know that 5/10 is going to be 1/2 because 5 is half of 10. I'm looking at my denominators, by the way, and I'm saying, okay, 2 and 5, I know 2 and 5 both go into 10, so that's why I picked 10 as my common denominator. Sorry, I didn't really explain that. I just kind of jumped into it. So, in order to change 1/2 into using tenths, I know I have 5 halves. Now, to change, I times both of them by 5, by the way, and that gives me that. And then to change this one, I have to times 5 by 2 to get that 10. And because I times the bottom by 2, I have to times the top by 2. And that gives me 4/10. So I'm adding this. Now, when I'm adding fractions, you just go straight across the top. So 5 plus 4 gives me 9. And I keep the denominator. I haven't changed the size of my pieces that I'm working with. That's why I keep that denominator. So if I come back to my equation and I say, okay, I got rid of that by doing the opposite, it's no longer on that side. I still have a negative 4/3 y is equal to, now that I've done all of this, I know it's equal to 9/10. So what I was saying before was, remember we have this and these two numbers are multiplying because they're touching. So we want to undo multiplication by dividing. I'm going to do a fraction bar because that's what I like to see. So I'm dividing that fraction. Over here, I'll put divide by 4/3. If it was switched and we saw it like 9/10 is equal to a negative 4/3 y, I would need to put it behind it because in division, order matters. So make sure you're putting it behind it. In this case, I had plenty of space back here. If it's like this, you need to squeeze it behind what you already have, okay? So now, realize that I didn't change the sign because I'm only changing one thing. So I am changing multiplication to division. I am not changing a negative to a positive. Plus, a negative divided by a negative cancels out, and I have my y alone. You see that? So that's important. Also, over here, I also divided by a negative. So a positive divided by a negative, I know my answer is going to be negative. So I hope that helps. Now I have a trick when I'm dividing fractions, remember, copy, dot, flip. -3/4. So now I've changed it into a multiplication problem, which is nice because when we multiply fractions, we just go straight across. So 9 times a -3 is -27, and 10 times 4, and I don't use my negative twice because if I did, I would have two negatives and I would think it was a positive. I don't use it twice, I only use it once knowing that my answer is going to be negative. So 10 times 4 is 40, and I have a -27/40 as my answer. If you have a calculator, it makes it a lot easier. Obviously, you don't have to do those steps that I did with you, but still, it's the same idea. Even though we're working with fractions, we're doing the same thing to them. We're adding them, we're dividing them, we'll be subtracting them, we'll be timesing them. So really, it's just the idea that you are trying to get everything away from your variable so that we know what it is.